Welcome back, everyone. This is Sethikus Boza, Blue Flame, healing arts, occult science, and getting into certain topics that have not been touched upon. Pertinent conversation, bringing together portions of ancient knowledge, the correlations, so that we can make the corrections in terms of the timeline and where things are in context of the session. Amanda, it's good to have you on.
Amazing. Thank you for having me here. And I really look forward to diving in with you and with everyone watching. We do have quite the extensive ground to cover tonight with talking about ancient Lemuria. Thank you for having me.
To Lemuria. What is Lemuria to you?
Lemuria right now is everything. I think Lemuria has everything to do with what's going on globally. We are coming out of a spiritual oppression of alien hybridization and traumas. How this is basically affecting everyone right now. Lemuria's history must be known. This is a part of our birthright to have this information. Those of us who carry the Ascension line, the Magi Grail lines, those of us who are activated, feeling above, who are ancient, who are shamans, indigenous, all of us, right? This is our birthright to have this information, this memory, this timeline to be activated within us. It's time to integrate it. It's a part of next phase of our global spiritual healing and transformation. We have to reconnect to the land to salvage the diabolical digression that has been placed on the feminine technology on this earth. So a lot's been lost with that, with the feminine God technology.
That goes into reversals, wiping out the alpha and the sigma males, and what's implemented seeds of vision to a poisoned womb. All of the different gridworks of consciousness. At one time, the earth was at a place of one in context of Pangea. When the landmass was together, the earth was in alignment, the biosphere of the earth mother herself. When the original human races, first and second seeding almost completely and totally fucking annihilated. Now, the history of Atlantis and Lemuria is very fucking interesting. The implications of what happened here on earth and why shit got fucked up all goes back to the Inyan massacre. And I explain this getting into those segments. You're privy to the Syrian gridworks and what they reveal. And again, there's many different gridworks of consciousness in our realm in terms of the galactic spiral of creation, taken to the three spirals of creation, the Triskelion sigil of the Druids. All of these different things interlaced in terms of maps and compasses in order to navigate and weave this tapestry back the fuck together again. And the wounds that have been coming up in terms of remembering everything to the procession, the main fucking theme right now, in terms of what hit the world in 2020 prior as well, going all the way into 2025, I've stated that we are in a major, major time of healing in context to the ancestors. So it's all of these codes that are being awakened. Most people, they're at the first veil learning about the corruption of government and fucking communist agenda. And well, at the same time, I think that there are individuals out there experiencing memory. Now, when it comes to your memory of Lemuria, share with me a little bit of what has come to you.
Sure. So I consider myself to be a Hydra ambassador. I carry a lot of the first creational genocidal memories. I remember a lot of what actually happened in Mu. The way that I've come to perceive it through a Hydra perspective, through a serpent perspective, there were a lot of original seed races at the time of Mu. One of them was Draco. One of them was Hydra. One of them was Cygnus. There was Andromedan systems, the Cassiopeian systems, Crux. Crux was very important to the people of Mu. There was an ancient brotherhood in Mu called the Nakals. The Nakal Brotherhood was 7 ancient cities, 7 Rishik cities that accounted for the 7 ancient races, were the refugees that started Lemuria. They took that into Australia, they took that into the North and South Americas, they took that into China, they took that into New Zealand. They were displaced at the time that Mu sunk. On a galactic perspective, I remember as a great Cassiopeian War. There was like...
Right. The whole idea that things in terms of Mu and Lemuria were all peaceable and this fucking paradise, in terms of what you're saying, is complete and total fucking bullshit, correct?
There was prior to the sinking of Mu. Mu was a technologically advanced civilization. It was very lovely. They didn't have poverty. They had the ability to sail all over the world. Everyone had food. Everyone had a roof over their head. They didn't have a monetary system. That corruption didn't exist. But I do think that savagery existed. Cannibalism that descended with the Draco system over 500, 600,000 years ago. That itself plays a role into where we are. Fast forward 6,000 years ago, going into the organized dark brotherhoods. Cannibalism is the root of that.
legends of the vampires that we fucking hear about. And shit is fucking real. They're not just implementing things in allegory, using the Hollywood dark magic wand for entertainment. They had to let us know what the fuck is going on. A lot of people pass this shit the fuck off. In terms of my actual fucking experience, no, this is very fucking real. You cross a certain threshold and you start to have the memories come to you. It's backed up by experience and then doing research and study to be able to verify certain things in terms of what you were actually experiencing to navigate what the fuck is actually happening here. You're going to get lost in the fucking labyrinth without the proper foundation. Okay, and this is why I created the mystery school, initiating people into the occult, moving well past a lot of the information that's out there, and getting into the actual viable, proper knowledge and wisdom that we need in order to have that foundation and then be able to navigate everything else accordingly.
Yeah.
Especially going through that process of activation. And when the codes start revealing them, I have memory as well. Take it back to fucking Egypt and Atlantis and Lemuria and the ancient wars that took place, and memory of what it was like before in terms to the Eden biosphere and a lot of other things that we're going to be touching upon. The Earth at one time was in alignment at a 90-degree axis to the solar north. And this is when the gates into our reality field were not sealed the fuck off like they are in terms of the poles. You can't even travel into those fucking regions now. A lot of people want to argue whether the Earth is flat or fucking if it's a fucking sphere and all this different shit. The Earth is a multi-dimensional sphere of influence here on the solar spiral of creation, and the Earth Mother herself. It is everything. Everything is converging here in Midgard. And taking things back to the actual mythos here in terms, the first and second seeding of humanity all go back to the Alpha. Okay, and this is ancient Syrian B Codex in terms of the galactic spiral creation and a lot of what's been revealed in terms of those grid works and the push on in terms of reversals when it comes to the crystalline Syrian B AI agenda. I'll go back to the manipulation of these grids and trade deals that have taken place, the Draconian and Reptilian, with the crystalline Syrian bees that are going to work to implement the technologies necessary to harvest the human race even fucking harder than they did when the invasions took place via the Sumerian Draconian Empire. It's the exact same goddamn fucking thing.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for us to integrate the consciousness of Mu, the motherlands in Lemuria, because it's important for us to understand that the original Dark Brotherhoods came in at this time. This wasn't something that just happened at Atlantis. We have to go to the core, basically acknowledge these aspects. I think that's a huge dilemma in humankind. Is there's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of not wanting to take accountability or responsibility for what's going on in the world.
Yeah. Everybody out there listening to us right now, you are all responsible for your own fucking condition. You want to blame, shift, and finger point. When you come to a certain point of awareness and awakening, you realize there's no longer an excuse in terms of what's been revealed.
Absolutely. And you come to that point once your consciousness expands because you're seeing everything. You're aware of everything. And when you're aware of everything, you are accountable to your own identity and limitations that are within it. Soul ascend, you become fully whole and embodied. So those human limitations become less and less. It's fully embodied compassion.
The true power of the feminine force is in that care and in that nurture. Ego, in terms of the arts and sciences that I teach, is the will force. Now, in terms of reversal manipulation of the will force, driven by all of the fucking woundedness, not only experienced in this life, take it to the blood codes, the ancestors, getting into the galactic spirals, our cosmic galactic history has to be seen for what the fuck it is in terms of identity. When all of this stuff comes up and you're being driven by fear, first of all, to walk this path, you have to completely eradicate fear and recognize that fear is a spiritual force implemented in terms of nerve induction, and a lot of other things that manipulate the emotional capacity in terms of your intelligence, emotional mind control. And if people don't understand the power that we are actually up against and their knowledge of mankind, not only knowledge of who we are as men and women, but the actual fucking history, and not seeing the hour that we are in right now, then we're not going to cross this goddamn threshold. It's just going to be a repeat of the same goddamn cycles that have been implemented. The lockdown, the Metatronics, getting into actual grid works of consciousness. Had people ask me, what the fuck is a grid work of consciousness? What would you say a grid work of consciousness is?
It's a holographic design in the planet, and it is parallel and it is one with our body consciousness matrix, and it's encoded with the blueprint instruction set. And there's a lot of radial diversity within that and genetic diversity within that. I tell a lot of star seeds inquiring about their origins. You are already everything. It's all about rehabilitation of those genetic diversities. I mean, through healing, that's what we're doing, through tuning into the holographic matrix that lives within the planet. There's different levels of mastery within different perceptions of those levels when you get to them. Celestial ascension. It's our mission as starseeds to work with those cosmic matrices, but also to be extracting alien machinery, the fallen entities, and everything that's basically obstructing and siphoning and damaging that living light matrix within the planetary grid system.
This all goes back to the manipulation of genetics and reversal codes, the Metatronics, the actual consciousness of the fucking parasite. The parasite is not of this fucking goddamn universe. And in terms of the first war that ever took place among the Celestials, it all goes back to the resurgence of the old ones into the 9 worlds. And this is what the fuck they're putting in the Needlecraft, Amanda. Quite fucking literally.
Okay. Yeah, the Cthulhu, the parasitic invasion. Yeah, it's draconic also. I think they are injecting with those genetics to reinstall those genetics to sync them into the hive mind. So that way there's the ability to control through AI and also through the electronically controlled hive.
And this goes back to the trade deals that took place via the Odedicron, Reptilian, and the Omicron, Draconian trade deals that took place because they're completely fucked otherwise. And they need bodies to host in order to continue siphoning human genetics and consciousness to fuel line their gridworks of consciousness implemented. Okay, what about our gridworks? What about the ancient gridworks? What about the fucking goddamn prophecy in terms of what we are really connected to beyond all this? Okay, that's what a lot of people don't fucking understand about their lives, is that many of the gridworks that they are keyed into on an unconscious, subconscious level is fuel lining their fucking goddamn agendas, whether they know it or not. And gridworks of consciousness, this is what I've explained to people that have asked me this question. One of the most ancient representations of a gridwork of consciousness in context is religion. You think about all the different religions that have been imprinted in terms of gridworks in the reality field. Okay, all of these that sprang forth the manipulation of the dark Melchizedeks that came forth, Atlantis, Lemuria, Sumeria, and Egypt. This dark priesthood went out, cutting everybody off from their fucking roots, implementing these gridworks as an overlay in terms of distortions. This has taken thousands of fucking years. It didn't just happen overnight. It was systematically planned. And throughout the centuries and all the different wars that have taken place, think about all the blood and sacrifice and murder and the fucking cannibalism, like you're talking about, that is actually taking place in order to fuel line these specific gridworks that are feeding a force that, first of all, absolutely fucking despises the human race to the fucking core. Why? Because of our potential. I don't care if you're a rainbow bear starseed child from fucking Andromeda. Okay, I could tell you what my codes are on the galactic level. All of that. And this is what I want to explain to all of the assumed starseed and indigo rainbow. All of that. All of that is there in terms of gridworks to access. But okay, what are you doing here on Earth to master being human? And the whole idea that it's dirty to be human, that something's wrong with you, and that it's somehow better on the other fucking side of the equation, not knowing the dynamic of what's happened, not just on Earth, but on a cosmic level. In terms of cosmology and how things actually work, the heavens are within us. So all of these gridworks of consciousness that are here on Earth, let alone the galactic spirals of creation, are all there within us in terms of our mechanics, our codex, and what we can access, what we can't access. Some of us, like we talked about before we got started, are working with different portions of genetics on all spectrums of the 3 spirals of creation. And so our navigation becomes unique, right? Now the ultimate goal is ascension, correct? And as far as I'm concerned, true ascension happens here on Earth at the spearhead of evolution. And so gridworks of consciousness, there's so fucking many gridworks.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a major, major question. What you're keyed into, not keyed into, aware of, not aware of. Okay, what do I need to be aware of? What do I actually need to be keyed into in order to truly ascend here on ground level? Not falling into the pathwork of spiritual escapism or the idea that these beings are going to come fucking save us or do anything for us. That is a part of the malevolent false cold light agendas, as far as I'm concerned. What do you say to that?
You're nailing it. To go back to what you said about the overlays or the matrices or the control networks, I think there's many different evolutions of it. We have the purity of the white ray. This is all about expansion. This is all about inspiration. This is all about freedom codes, which we're seeing in current events right now. We're that aligned to that. Tries to be hijacked by other control matrices, such as the Metatronic and Yahweh. And then there's different subcategories of those control matrices through different radiogenetic diversities that come through when we get into lower density levels, right?
No,
so like,
now,
yeah,
I want to talk about that in terms of the dove and the symbolism of the dove. 2 Metatronic reversals, mathematical inversions, and all this different kind of shit. In terms of the occult, symbolism is essentially neutral until you really start fucking seeing how certain things are inverted. Now, in fucking context, everybody, to the reversals here, this specific grid work, you showed me the map of it. I literally came out of my fucking goddamn seat when I saw it. It's so fucking ancient to Lemuria and these ancient grid works that existed. Were taken the fuck over by the Dark Ones, okay? In terms of the symbolism of the dove, I'm going to share some things with you. Astaroth. We're going to get into fucking Astaroth here. And in terms of the Qliphoth, which came forth the Sumerian Draconian Empire, is the twisting and inversions of certain grids in terms of magic and symbolism, which set forth an appropriation sanctioned by the Dark Priest class in terms of the false cold light matrices. So they're playing both sides of the equation at this fucking point. You understand what I'm saying? And they did this not only through religion, but organized occultism. Things in terms of the temple of Asur, doves in context to reversal codes to the Metatronics represented by the Canaanite mother goddess Asherah is something that you
Asherah, okay.
Right? Listen to what I'm saying. And then later, the Roman goddess in terms of Venus and Fortuna in reference as an attack on the feminine force, taking things back to the Inyani massacre like I'm fucking talking about, and the rise of the Dark Priest class in terms of the cult of Baal Lilith, where all of this symbolism was stolen and inverted in terms of the Dark Sisterhoods.
You really went 360 there. You went full circle with the explanation of that. That's exactly it. And that's what happened in Mu. Going back to Mu, going back to the Motherlands. The original creation story of woman was in those ancient Nakal tablets that were taken to India and Tibet. That was all hidden. A lot of those were actually destroyed by the Catholic Church, by the Vatican, all these things. But yeah, it goes 360. And you see that representation of that again through Asherah, the wife of El. You see the objectification of her there. You see the demonization of woman there. And you all see it again in the Gnostic teachings with the Yaldabaoth and Sophia, the fall of Sophia. It absolutely has to do with the ancient expression of the dove grid in ancient Australia. The Anangu people held this light matrice there in purity. And that matrice was then hijacked by the Anunnaki Draco hybridization through the J seals and the selenite pylon rod network. They hijacked that in North America. So what we're starting to see now is the expansion of that light matrix through the 222 codes, the 2022 to the 2200. We're going to start to see that light matrix begin to expand. And as that happens, those who are ready to receive that expansion of that grid within them will be upgraded. Their light bodies will be upgraded. So they won't exist off of the karmic wheel of suffering and
potentially in context, but in terms of what's been implemented with the reversal codes and distortions, if anybody out there is dealing with any sort of crazy shit, this is the memory of what happened coming back up waking consciousness in terms of review so that we can heal the fucking ancestors. The whole point of the procession is healing the ancestors going into 2025 and 2028. All of the fucking grids, even the ancient ones that were at one time in a place of at-one and alignment, have all been fucking manipulated. They've all been fucking used against mankind. It's the taking back of the grids, doing actual fucking grid work. I've traveled all over North America. And you know what's fucking ironic in terms of what's happened in Canada? I used to be a trucker.
yeah, you were saying that.
So it's ironic. And when I was out there traveling, I knew I was doing grid work. I knew I was tearing down shit within the ethers wherever I went, and then even warning about what was going to hit the world in 2020. Strap the fuck in. They're going to try to slam their fucking hammer the fuck down because they know that they cannot fucking stop what is coming and what is happening in the hour that we are in right now. So whatever codes you have, I don't care if it's some fucked up shit, even to the draconian and the reptilian. What people need to understand about the history. Here's another thing I wanted to bring into this conversation. These Nanu were allowed to come here, become partakers of the biospiritual regenesis, but then all of these betrayals took place. And then the wars and the systematic implication of all these fucking inquisitions that have lasted thousands of fucking years, wiping out the shaman lines, wiping out the Magi Grail grids, taking them the fuck over systematically. And all this goes back mainly to the wars that took place between Samaria and Egypt after the Ice Age. Take about 26,560 BC, like after about 14,000 years, that the Dark Luciferian Covenant was established. On a cosmic level, on a higher level, take it back to the Ruby Order in terms. What the fuck happened? The parasite is what the fuck happened. And there's no other mythos out there that speaks about the fucking parasite, save the Nordic tradition. It is one of the absolute oldest in terms of prehistory. Atlantis and Lemuria is not the oldest theme in terms of humanity. Humanity has existed millions of years. And you think about our galactic origins, take it back to Lyra and the Lyran Codex as well. Codes of the Lion, the eagle, the dragon, like really amazing things in terms of spiritual transformation, because you're talking about radial diversity. There's this dove, right? Take it back to what I said in terms of Astaroth and the Clipoth. An overlay in terms of this that they have been able to throw reversal codes into to lock down the human race. This is what the fuck is breaking up. This is why everything is happening the way that it is, because it's not going to fucking last.
I'm thinking about the reversal codes, and when it comes to the reversal codes, which I have talked extensively about on my channel, I called myself a grid hunter for a long time because I was just going around basically shooting down all of the bullshit systems and all of the mechanics that are beneath it, calling it out. I really felt like for a long time as the only person who is actively seeking and eradicating Draco implants, Draco systems on the earth, which is something that we don't talk about a lot because you're talking about these reversal codes. Well, if we're talking about reversal codes, then we got to talk about all of these implants that are implanted into the earth's field that are preventing the liberation of humanity, genetics, particular genetics that are in particular time capsules and timelines and running reality fields and dark matrices and fallen systems and wormholes. We got to talk about how everything is capped. There have been seals and implants that have been placed by the Vatican. I mean, this is extensive.
It is very extensive. And this is what people don't understand in terms of the occult. It's not one sliver of knowledge. It's so much that still has to be revealed. There's still not enough proper knowledge and wisdom yet.
This is the problem. Those of us who are starseeds and indigos, we come in awakened. We do not receive ancient knowledge and wisdom when we need it, which is at the age of 4 and 5 years old. Are we not asking? Are we not looking at the Catholic Church and the Christian Church and going, this is bullshit? You know that priest is bullshit at 4, 5 years old. You're already asking the questions. We need ancient wisdom at this age. This is what sends indigos and starseeds into the dark night of the soul. We are killing our own kind by withholding information. This is why we have bleeding grids. This is why we have Skid Row in California shooting up with their addictions. They never got information that they needed at 4 years old.
Whether you're 4 or 5 or fucking 20, 85, I don't give a fuck if you're 10,000 fucking years old in fucking Codex. Do you remember who the fuck you are? Do you know who the fuck you are? That's the whole basis of initiation into the occult. It's the foundation, is to know thyself. You're not going to be able to navigate and know reality otherwise. It's the whole fucking point. And again, it's very interesting getting into the Galactic Codex and the implications with that, because when I was a kid, they didn't fucking get me. I have star blood. And what's important is knowing who you are. Okay, what are you going to do with it? What do you want to do with it? You can go around and think that you're fucking special and things systematically are getting fucking worse. We got to pull this shit together in a way that's never been done before since what happened. That's the whole point of having these conversations and getting into these fucking topics, because going into 2023, listen, this is another warning. Okay? I warned about 2020. Get ready, motherfuckers. 2023 when Pluto goes into Aquarius, there is not going to be a man, woman, or child on the face of the earth that's not going to know about the fucking goddamn creation. It has reached such a height of absolute fucking arrogance, seeing into the ancient future. I'm a seer, and I've seen well beyond. There's so much confusion in terms of who the fuck we actually are, and getting back to our roots as a people, blood codes, soul codes, to the actual fucking knowledge in terms of our occult history. Take it back to Atlantis and Lemuria. Take it back to the original human races, the Alfar themselves, and the wars that also took place among their kind in terms of the Svartalfar, the Drugar, being taken over by the fucking parasites, things to the faith. Races were destroyed by the fallen Anu. They're in the Sumerian text, in cuneiform, carved into fucking stone. What has happened in terms of our progenitors, what we were cut off from, not just the ancient animist traditions, but the Alfar.
When you're talking about this parasite, what is the parasite in comparison to cannibalism? The savagery didn't come about until the first sinking of Mu. There's supposedly two sinkings of Mu. One was volcanic, and then one was a gas belt took the continent down, and then there was suffering.
The sinking of Lemuria all goes back to Pangaea. This also goes back to Atlantis and the sinking of Atlantis. It wasn't just Lemuria or Atlantis, it was the entire fucking earth. Look, you can put South America together with Africa like puzzle pieces. If you look at the tectonic plates underneath the Atlantic Ocean, they all fit flawlessly together. And again, this is how it was when the earth was at a 90-degree axis. Humans lived thousands upon thousands of years. What's our lifespan now? There's something fucking wrong here. Okay. The number one thing that we have all been cut off from as humans is our connection to the higher force. You're not going to experience activation of your fucking codes otherwise. You can have knowledge about these things and assume what are you actually extracting from these gridworks of consciousness that are going to be a benefit where we're at.
Right. So when did the Dark Brotherhoods really come in to terrorize and destroy humankind? Because it wasn't Atlantis like they want us to believe.
The rise of that, as far as what's been revealed to me, all goes back to Egypt, where magic became corrupt. The wars that took place between the Sumerian Draconian Empire and the 18th dynasty prior. After the 18th dynasty in Egypt, that's when shit became corrupt. 19th dynasty onward, it's all fucking Aton, Sethian gridworks of consciousness that were being implemented into the fucking world at that point. And the knowledge and the history of that, especially in terms of the mythos, and all of the inversion of symbolism, even to the gods and goddesses, like I was saying about Astaroth. Ashura, she's the goddess of nature, right? The appropriation in terms of reversal codes goes back to the fact that we've been torn away from nature, that the womb has been fucking wounded, okay? That womb, that inverted womb, that wounded womb.
Yeah.
All goes back to how they have been able to rob us of that peace and fucking harmony in our world, because woman is containing the seed of vision. This is the vision that was implemented by the fucking dark ones for mankind, rob us of our fucking freedom and enslave us into their fucking gridworks.
It takes me back to that great Cassiopeian war that I remembered from Mu. There was a divine feminine council that descended from Cassiopeia that fought in a war of hydras versus Draco, savages versus serpents. This has to do with the division of the sexes, that this dark inception of a dark priesthood comes down to just the dividing of the sexes. It had to do with impregnation. This actually caused warfare in the third, and it's the same like reversal or inversion that we're seeing now. That division of the sexes that had happened, if this a part of that parallel.
I would say all of the above.
Yeah.
The real question people need to ask themselves: are you at a true place of at-one-ment with yourself? Who the fuck are you? And with that, I'm going to go and pull this segment into a break. There's a lot of very interesting things that have been discussed so far with this segment here with Amanda DeMarco via IndigoAngel. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame Healing Arts, and Occult Science. We'll be right back after the break. In the darkest recesses of your mind, there is always a glimmer of something that is begging to be set free. There's always part of your thoughts or an idea that is restricted and oppressed. How it got there, you might not know, but then again, you might. The result remains the same. You must break open the prison of your mind and release all that is within. You cannot hoard ideas. The mind must always be free and at liberty. When you cage it and embed it so firmly in one way of being, you silence its true voice. Like a bird of paradise kept in a cage, its song dying with a long song to be free. But I hear already the threat of the tide coming in. There is no time. Go and run. Fly and be free. Welcome back. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame, Healing Arts, and Occult Science. Here on the most interesting segment, getting into ancient knowledge that is for our time now in terms of the procession. I'm here with Amanda DeMarco via IndigoAngel. Now to continue with this segment. What is your assumed identity versus your true identity? Men and women have an identity in this reality field as men and women. This, in terms of other reversal codes, the symbolism of the union of the divine masculine and the divine feminine presents itself androgynous in terms of symbolism, but as the science and things in terms of fundamentals and principles there to observe in terms of how things actually work to achieve a true harmony. Let's talk about the dark ones. Come in the guise of peace, come in the guise of liberation, come in the guise of freedom, but are working to implement agendas that are absolutely totally fucking robbing us of that. One example of that, 1960s, in terms of the hippie movement. This gets into the rune algas. Okay, and the rune algas, in terms of that symbol being Merkstave, inverted is the peace symbol, which means in terms of this energy, in terms of cosmic law and how things actually work, algas inverted means being consumed by negative forces. It implements a loss of our connection with the divine, with that core, and a turning away and repulsion of the aligned energies, and is a forewarning of hidden danger. This is what the runes, the fire letter codex of my ancestors reveals. Symbolism that was stolen by them, and they uprooted all this different kind of shit. And this all goes back to Sumeria in context. The Templars, when they went in, that's all the fucking crusades and shit. It's Vatican assassin fucking bullshit. And the wars that took place in terms of popes, and that's a whole other fucking topic of conversation. And the jockeying of control and Gridworks and Stargates and knowledge, and it's so much to get into.
It really is. Distortion really does lie in our obsession and our addiction, the root of a lot of this darkness and a lot of the shadow, and what propagates all of the control networks and control systems at a much deeper level. It ties into the root chakra. It ties into the sexual energy. And it's frustrating to me because this is not in the direction of the prophecy. So when you see the timeline split, timeline that is anchored and still going to be rooted in that system, until that is reconstructed from its core, until we have an entirely different value system that comes in, how is that ever going to shift and change?
This is what I would say. What is the true currency of our existence? As far as I'm concerned, it's honor, it's loyalty, it's respect, it's actual fucking purpose. Things in terms of trade, taking it back to the law of Goebel, this is cosmic law. Equal energy exchange, life force energy being siphoned into these Gridworks, and then people made slave to the fucking corporation, the control of fucking assets, resources, economy, all this fucking lower tier shit. First fucking veil, manipulating the temporal existence. Okay, it's fucking with our means to actually live here and have what we need to potentially move into a place of expansion and fucking thriving. And those of us that know the fucking difference, that know the fucking game, building our economy and using their system against them in context of what we fucking know. Not they have all this fucking power. It's not to say that I agree with how it's been fucking constructed, but we live within their fucking empire in terms of their fucking constructs. And you got to know how it fucking works. Otherwise, you're completely fucked here. This is a big fucking task. These motherfuckers have been at this.
Those just triggered you, didn't it?
Instantly. The reason why I would say it fucking triggers me as a fucking men. Men are here to fucking dominate, but dominate in terms of truth and being in alignment in context of true purpose. not being a fucking slave to the fucking machine and all this other fucking bullshit. So things in terms of peace and being a peaceable person, I'll be at peace with myself as long as it depends on me. But if something comes and tries to fuck with my freedom or fuck with any harmonious trajectory that I'm working to implement and be in a position of co-creation with other people in the network like yourself and people that fucking get it, I'm going to go to battle and I will go to fucking war in order to protect that peace. Algaz is going up into alignment. I'm all about the prophecy, White Dragon prophecy. I'm going to get into this even more in the future. Timeline trajectory in terms of the ancient future, where there will be a generation that fucking gets it. And in terms of that ancient future, it is now on this timeline where we are right now that humanity really started to wake the fuck up. Most people there at the first fucking veil. And so all of that and people's lives getting fucked with and the uprise of truckers running up and down the very top of this grid, the wings of it. Things are lighting up in the fucking world to tear down these inverted constructs and all these net straps and all this fucking bullshit. In the ethers, it's not peaceable in the fucking ethers. Beyond it, yeah. And that's what we need to focus on in terms of why we are fucking fighting. Why the fuck are we warring? It's about protection. Algaz, again, in alignment is the energies of protection. It's power within, ignited. It's the higher self. It's the higher force. It's defense. It's sanctuary. It's safety. It's refuge. It's that opportunity that you have to grow and expand and thrive. It's the divine plan. The true plan in terms of incarnation. But I did not incarnate to be a fucking slave.
For many, it's a process of realizing that and decoding those programs that basically held them within those timeline capsules. It's about clearing their universal tree of life. It's about removing the bondage and the etheric binding and the cords and the shackles to those slavery contracts in the first place. It takes one to even be able to access their Atlantean Akashic field before they can even strip that off of their core structures.
Yeah. That's a lot of pain right there that I've had to go into. I think you have as well in terms of these memories. Take it back to Lemuria, take it back to Atlantis, take it back to what happened to the first and second seeding, where we were cut off in terms of the actual birthright of mankind. And this is what I think those of us that know the difference are here to reinstate and re-implement in terms of true awakening, this plan that was decided even before incarnation. That's what I know about myself. This divine communication that we get within ourselves, having a lot of different things revealed to us. And in terms of that spiritual transformation, again, all of that radial diversity, like you're talking about, within these Gridworks are those codes igniting within people. Okay, what are you connected to? Who the fuck are you? What is it that you have to work? What is it that you have to heal through? You have to face these forces that are on the other side of the equation that do not want you to wake the fuck up. Again, we're in a fucking war.
I know I've personally gotten to a place where identity doesn't really even matter at all for some of the things that I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to be more clear of a seer or be more accurate in a remote view, or I'm trying to do more traveling or whatever it is, the more identity I hold, the less ability I am to reach ultralight spectrum, which is traveling at the speed of light or having much higher, faster particle rotation. So that way you can do these things at much faster manifestation speeds, right? I think there's so many different processes that people are in. And as one regresses to embody their identity, it becomes important because there's so much transcendence of clearing traumas and things that are holding them back in this lifetime. Where are you at? What purpose is it serving right now?
And that's the assumed identity that has to fucking die, so that who you truly are in terms of your gifts, skills, abilities, other people out there is actually fucking revealed. And then you can bob and weave and navigate and transcend and truly ascend here on ground level while pulling from all these different Gridworks of consciousness and healing those Gridworks from within yourself here on earth to reestablish the original timeline trajectory. This is what I've talked about for over a fucking goddamn decade on my platform, the original timeline.
How do you see the original timeline?
How do I see it? I see it in so many ways. That's a loaded question. In terms of what specifically?
Probabilities into the future, prophecies of where the world's going.
One of the main things that people need to get back to is their actual fucking roots, animist traditions in terms of blood codes. Again, healing the ancestors, because we're not going to be able to navigate all this galactic shit that's being implemented unless we know what we have to work with here on Earth. Who are you? What is your tribal codex? I have very, very strong tribal codes. And it's not identity in terms of group dynamics and the tribe. Like that's where you get to identity. No, Who are you within the tribe? What is your purpose? What are your skills? What are your gifts? What are you able to actually implement? And this goes back to the ancient system of the Druids, where it wasn't one overseer in terms of the fucking tribe. Whatever you were gifted at and whatever you were fucking skilled at, that was your area of expertise. And therefore, anytime this came up in terms of a certain situation, you would be the chief in that fucking situation, whether you're a man or a woman. It's not men over women or whatever. It's who are you? What are you capable of? What are your gifts? What's your capacity in terms of integration, let alone awareness and higher consciousness? Not everybody out there can build a car. Not everybody out there can cook in the same fashion or implement knowledge or even be a teacher like what we do. There are certain positions in terms of who we are and given our gifts, skills, and abilities. I think for people to be in a place of true joy and purpose and honor in terms of their own life, knowing who you are is very fucking important. But if you're clinging on to that assumed identity and that's going into the fucking death throes in terms of actual fucking awakening, the codes and the memories coming back and all this crazy fucking stuff, you're not going to be able to navigate that without proper knowledge and wisdom. It's just not going to fucking happen. Go on this quest like I did, and I think other people, maybe even you as well. It took us years to figure this shit the fuck out. The bridging and unity of bloodlines. At one time, all of the dragons of the cardinal directions all sat at table. This was Mu. This was Lemuria, what once was. Take it back to Tara on the solar spiral creation. There was the destruction of that, and then take it to Chiron and fucking Maldek. And now we're here on Earth having to fucking deal with this dynamic that took place about 26,000, 50,000 fucking years. So the more people that do the real work, the more people that actually go into their codes and they go into healing and going into these memories of how it was before, this is how we're going to bring things back onto the original fucking timeline trajectory here on ground level.
Yeah.
That is how
and that bridging and that unity of the bloodlines, that's coming through the light. Arcing creational rays are going to heal everything from every timeline. That's what the expansion is supposed to do. It happens in phases and it happens in different levels in which that presents. One of the ways that it presents is it heals all of the distortions. It heals all of the traumas from those timelines. It's going to bring forth guardianship. It's going to bring forth parental roles of the earth and people who are ready to step up into those roles. It's going to bring forth the King Arthur codes. It's going to bring forth the healthy divine masculine and feminine. And those ripples, that light can heal that like this. And you want to know what? This is one of the reasons why I was seeing the Dove expansion so much was because I kept getting sickness. I kept seeing this one and I'm seeing this higher emanation. And we talked about that different primordial forms of the expansion, either through the lion, the white eagle, the white dragon. There's these different emanations of it all through the primordial white ray, the arc ray of creation.
And that for me, in terms of what you're saying, all goes back to the white dragon prophecy in the original Gridworks that are being fired up with the Emperor session. I
realized with the Swan, Alpha Cygnus, there was a galactic explosion, basically stars, a supernova wave, light wave, and that's been coming. We are receiving those light waves. That was impacting the Earth. January 2022, we're supposed to be receiving the full integration of that supernova blast from Alpha Cygnus, July 2022. It's expected that we're going to have 3 days of not having any nighttime. 3 days of just integrating light. It's not the prophecy fulfilling itself. The hijackings being released from those systems. Are those systems still playing out? Yes. Is the Cabal taken down? No. Is the Draco systems taken down? Are the hierarchy structures still standing? Yes. But again, according to frequency and according to the grid structure that you hold within by doing all of the work that you just said, you're going to live on New Earth and you're going to live in future prophecy. You're going to live on higher timelines. You will be able to observe those things.
We're already fucking doing it. Even having this conversation right now, it's a part of us living this. We know about what the fuck is going on. What does that to do with our kind? What does that to do with those that are fucking aware, that are going to now move into a position of co-creation and actually fucking do something?
Yes.
Contrary, instead of being enthralled of the fucking problem. We talk about the poisoned root, and as far as what I presented on Black Earth Productions, I went to the poison root when I did that betrayal. So the segments, the rocks of the dynamic, when mankind betrayed wisdom, the office of Tahuti was taken the fuck over in terms of the Dark Priest class, the Brotherhood of the Snake, the Thothian sect, the cult of Baal, the cult of Lilith, the inversion of the feminine codes, which seeded evil into the fucking reality field. It does not indicate that the original birthright and codes in terms of what belongs to us as humans is out of the fucking picture. I think it's very eclectic what you've been able to speak about, implementing the white ray, the golden white light, ignition of the true spirit to soul code, blood code essence of who we are. And this process of expansion, hitting the astral barrier, hitting all the frequency fences and reversals that have to be stacked and burned within the cosmic methanol or taking the alchemical rites of initiation, like in order to heal and route this shit the fuck out, to even be at that place of capacity, knowing the difference, and then you start taking action in the real world to build something else. People took the dark night of the fucking soul in 2020. Holy motherfucking shit, man. I tried to warn people. I'm still trying to warn people about certain.
Yeah. It's necessary. It's necessary for their awakening. For one to integrate light, that's a part of the awakening process. And that's a part of the karmic wheel of suffering, the death and the rebirth, the death and the rebirth. It all comes back to Lemuria, how they used to teach this ancient wisdom. They used a wheel. It was called the Lemurian wheel, and they had spokes in it. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, and taking things back to the pentacle itself. There's man standing there at the wheel. What does the wheel represent to me? Circle the magician, where you stand in terms of that ignition of your true core essence. The sequencing of geometries and star geometries ultimately go into the eternal lotus. The symbolism of the pentacle, though, if you look at the Lemurian wheel, it's got 5 spokes.
Yes, so you do know about it.
Think of a 5-pointed star, this specific map in terms of the psyche. Now, going back to the Alfarian Codex and the silver wheel, it goes back to the original teaching. It goes back to the original timeline. It goes back to the original codex, buried asunder in terms of occult knowledge. This is why I teach from that place, taking people into initiation. Anything else you look into at that point, you're going to be able to see for what the fuck it is. Go a little bit into that in terms of your perception.
The Lemurian wheel, it was an esoteric way that they would teach society. And it's a way that they passed down the wisdom. Most of the wheels were gold, and they had different spokes, 8, 10 spokes, 12 spokes. Yes, I have mine. This is how we're going to end our segment today. It's will.
Okay, take it back to the pentacle like I'm talking about. There stands man, woman. The 5 areas that I teach people that we need to master are first the physical vessel, physical body, priming in the material, integration process with the mental and emotional bodies, the integration of your true light body, your spirit, and then mastering the temporal existence. Those 5 areas specifically.
So important to actually keep your supplements up. That's one thing that I've recently realized is most people are vitamin D deficient, not taking enough vitamin D. They need to be taking 5 to 20,000 IU, which is a lot. This was something that we discussed prior to discussing coming on. Fried electrical systems, fried nervous systems. Talk about the ascension symptoms that people are experiencing. Supplementation like magnesium and things like this, actually potassium, minerals being really, really low. This actually has a lot to do with the severity of those ascension symptoms, and also detoxification of your blood, because there's so much toxicity with chemtrails and nanoshedding and being around those who have got the jab. You're integrating all of those toxins, and so detoxification of your body is so important. Blood detoxification, taking detox baths, fasting, all of those things, drinking lots and lots of water. It's such a daily job to care for your physical body. I am doing it all day long. I'm always thinking about it every time I eat. I think with the dark night of the soul, it's really hard to recover state because you don't take care of yourself when you are in the dark night of the soul. It's really, really difficult. It's really, really hard to just do those simple things.
Things in terms of shadow work all go back to the physical vessel. That is where you're doing shadow work, where all of this stuff comes up. And in terms of sickness, disease, ailments, getting into metaphysical psychology, taking it back to psychosomatics, the very first place that the human race was colonized was within mind. And the nervous system is the technology that we utilize to streamline sound, consciousness, energy, frequency, and vibration into physicality. And then you have all the energy blocks and the different things that people are dealing with that is preventing the flow of energies in terms of their mechanics operating the right fucking way. All the different blocks, the Jehovah's seals, take it back to the nerve running up the left side of the fucking body. That is a manifestation of this distortion, taking it back to the fucking cataclysm. where they were able to implement all of these things into our physical body on an etheric level, take it to the mental and emotional bodies. So,
and having that overactive nervous system or overactive electrical body where that's frying out, what it's impacting the most in the divine masculine template is the 10th vagus nerve. The 10th vagus nerve has everything to do with all spinal communication, the digestive system, the brain. And by placing those seals and by capping certain dimensional fields so people can't have full and healthy flow of the electrical active masculine energy and backing up, that's what it damages and that's what it goes after. Suppressing the masculinity on this earth. You talk about not having the healthy masculine rising up, estrogen society.
Yeah, it's turned men into a bunch of fucking pussies. This is the destruction of that alpha sigma energy that is necessary as men in the reality field. We're at the fucking goddamn rampart, fuckers. And unless you assume that energy, you're completely fucked in terms of the real war that we're in. This war of attrition is designed to wear you the fuck thin. All the things that we are being hit with as humans here. I don't care if you're a Starseed, Indigo Child, Rainbow Bear from fucking Andromeda. The integration of those codes in terms of evolution, being at the spearhead of evolution, this is where we stand. This is why we fucking incarnate. And as to the battles that we all face as men and women, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or temporally speaking, a lot is going to determine things in terms of your attitude and again in how you approach the mysteries here in context. Things in terms of the timeline that we are on, pulling things back the original trajectory. If you have the first eye to see into that ignition in terms of your hardcore intelligence revealing itself, then you will have the ear to hear everything being implemented and also shift your focus in terms of our victory with what is coming. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame Healing Arts, and Occult Science. We're going to take another break here with Amanda and Marco via IndigoAngel. We will be right back. that, we are back. This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame, Healing Arts, Occult Science. Here in the most pertinent segment, joined by Amanda DeMarco via IndigoAngel. The Alfarian progenitors who stand at the shore in their gowns of copper, silver, and gold, ethereal power. They go back so much further than expected, beyond the medieval and historic fragments out of which our ancestors have woven the pagan, mytho-poetic past. It is more primordial, more radiant than those could assume. The ancient Alpha created many life forms, with the eternal starfire itself, according to cosmic and earthly rhythms. To them, Earth was a emerald temple, a very important place in the universe. Their lands were lost in the cataclysm, and their cycle came to an end. And some of us still exist. And in terms of the occult history, this happened with the successive star-core civilizations. Many of the wise beings of Lemuria traveled to other lands, bringing remnants of their culture and wisdom with them. And as was stated, cultures of the Japanese, the Chinese, the Tibetan, things in terms of the Druids, the Native American, the Sami, the Siberian, and Nordic pantheons. All was connected at one time, all was in alignment, and all the innumerable fragments scattered throughout the indigenous cultures of our world, including our roots, the Aryanhood, in remembrance to the Lemurian, whose name means silver wheel. The keepers of these codes to the ancient star teaching are they who weave them in through the etheric fabric and spindle of the fates themselves. Here we would ensue, and here we still continue to ensue an era when the Lemurian star wisdom is meant to be reinstated in order to bring us out of this long era of darkness and ignorance. Now to continue. Going back into the Lemurian wheel.
Yeah, it was an esoteric teaching tool that they used in the Lemurian time. It was ancient wisdom that was handed down. It was gold. It contained light language on it as well. They would teach the young the ancient occult sciences and the wisdom from a young age. And this is so vital and so important to the evolution of the spirit and the evolution of the soul. They had different wheels. They had a 4th wheel, an 8th wheel, 6th wheel, 10th wheel, and a 12th wheel. The 4th one was the 4 noble truths that they would teach. The 6th one was the 6 eternal substances, so the sentient being, the soul, the matter, the principle of motion, the principle of rest, and space and time. The 10th spokes would teach the directions, so north, south, east, and west, and then northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest. Yeah. And that was important because that's actually an aspect of cosmic law that we've been cut off to. Just think about it in terms of 4s. And then the 12 spokes were 12 links that would represent just how everything in life is interconnected. And that life is not a linear path, it's a cyclical path. 24 spokes meant that there's 12 links of dependent originations plus the reversing of those 12 links. So it was liberation from the condition of suffering and endless rebirth, which was what I had been talking about before. It basically ends the cycle of the dissatisfaction of an unenlightened life.
Think about most lives in this world. Once you reach a certain point in terms of your peak or whatever, it's too fucking late. Now, I'm well into my fucking 40s right now. I'm going on fucking 29. I feel fucking amazing in terms of my health and everything that I've experienced in terms of doing the real fucking work. Here's the other factor. The more people that do the real work, and I'm talking about the real, we're going to see earth changes. We're going to see things happen in the heavens. We're going to witness the shifting of consciousness taking place in the reality field that's going to have a direct effect on the earth mother herself. And everybody's afraid of a fucking bullshit and it's all going to get fucked up, even fucking worse. No. We have to bring this back into alignment. Otherwise, everything set at that 23.4 degree axis in terms of the most recent cataclysm is going to keep everything locked the fuck down in the fashion that it's been since what happened did.
And that's exactly what we're trying to prevent. Like you said, everything's going to stay locked in. We're trying to prevent those traumas, those wounds from being passed on to the future root races.
Right. They had to be fucking dealt with. Why is it so important for those that know that they're starseeds or indigo children, indigo adults? Why is it so important to integrate the Lemurian timeline here in context of what we're getting at?
Yeah.
So that you can heal, catch up the soul cycles to your purpose of incarnation and bring things back onto the original timeline trajectory. That's why we're dealing with all the shit that we're fucking dealing with. So it's not necessarily you. It's the things that were passed on.
Yeah.
It's the curses. It's all of these nets, traps, and snares and fucking chains of indifference that we have with our fucking core, with our actual core essence in terms of this ignition that we have been conditioned to be so fucking goddamn afraid of who we truly are. This is what the dark ones fear. It's mind control. This is emotional manipulation in terms of nerve induction and a lot of other things. So the ancient future, the timeline, new earth prophecy, forewarning to the white dragon prophecy, the fucking Ragnarok, the death of the gods. And it's the war of the fucking gods. Where's the war of the gods taking place? Right fucking here. Within every single one of us, because the gods and goddesses are the ancestors. Catching up the soul cycles and going through this process in terms of the procession, pull things back together. As far as I'm concerned, bullshit in context to infighting and psychological projections of an unhealed wound. You don't even know where the fuck it comes from. And it's not stuff you dealt with in this life. Take it back to ancient Lemuria and Atlantis and to Egypt and Samaria. The level of fucking pain and indifference that we have been conditioned to have with the true core essence of who we truly are is so fucking fierce. It was fierce for me because of who I am and what I represent.
And it goes back to those hybrid pain bodies, the zeta pain hybrid bodies, all of this dark alien hybridization. When you're talking about why it's so important to go back to Lemuria and to open up the Akashic fields, all the timelines, your eternal self, your immortal self, all of this wisdom, embody this, because that's what you were built to do. You were built to take this on and transcend it and rehabilitate it. This is what will heal all of the intergenerational collective cultural trauma, which is ancestral trauma, exactly what you're just saying. Stopping the cycles of those who were abused becoming the abusers and repeating those cycles to the future root race and the dragon grid, all of it.
Right. However
it emanates in all of its primordial forms, it's there to obliterate all of these dark traumas, creation, code cracking. It's next level stuff. Stealing of souls.
People don't realize about the Watchers. They have a treasury. They call it the treasury of souls, where they are collecting souls to fuel line the gridworks of consciousness.
Yeah.
This is nothing new. Read the book of fucking Enoch, okay? These beings that assume the title messenger, which is what angel actually represents. It's a messenger, okay? Messenger of what? Now, the original humans, take it back to the alpha, take it back to the fae. We were winged. I've even had people tell me that I have 3 pairs of wings.
That's what this is about, though. It's about getting your wings back. For some of us, you have to get your wings back because they were cut off, right? There are literally traumas and things that happen during those hybridization times from the timeline of Lemuria, where the 6th and 7th dimensional planetary seals, there was a cutting off of the wings. There's people that have to literally actually restore that. You know, and it takes years. It takes years of accessing the Akash and entering into these pain bodies that we have to rehabilitate.
I mean, who wants to go into that? You're going to get a whole bunch of people lined up for that shit. No, you're not. But this is what true shamanic initiation is all about. You take the rights because you're not going to fucking heal otherwise. You are going to be a fucking slave in this world otherwise. You're going to fucking put that bliss bullshit into the fucking water. True star core ignition and what that reveals to you as an individual. This is what I truly hope. The focus is that experience of your codes igniting via the higher force. That is the most important factor, because without it, even if you went into it, even if you had all the proper knowledge and wisdom, you wouldn't be able to navigate it or have connection to the level of fucking power, actual fucking power, your true magic to rip through these veils in terms of the lower astral gridworks and find that trajectory to the North Star from within your core. That is the guide where I'm going to get my memories. I'm going to get my activations in terms of Codex. I'm going to get access to gridworks of consciousness that are not just on the solar spiral of creation, navigating that, first of all, taking it back to the original teaching. There is a massive, massive reformation taking place in terms of the age of Aquarius we are coming into. And stack and burn the fuck out all of this fucking poison fucking detritus cannot take it into the new aeon. That's what's blocking you from crossing the fucking threshold. It's a mind fuck at a certain point.
Having the courage to share it with other people.
Yeah, because they think you're fucking crazy. Why? And the reason why you motherfuckers think we're fucking crazy is because you have yet to access what we fucking have. There's progenitors that are carving through these mathematical reversals. Trust me, it's going to hit you like a cosmic fucking hammer. This does not negate our responsibility being here on ground level and learning what it means to master being human. I have ancient Syrian B genetics. I have ancient Egyptian high priest pharaonic genetics in terms of Arcturus and Orion, and all these things to the galactic wars and histories, and the things that I have had to go into and heal. I'm not going to be working construction equipment when I'm going into a fucking vision. That shit didn't work. And so when people start experiencing this, what would you say is important for individuals that assume Codex to being a Starseed Indigo to integrate in terms of that? What would you say is the most important factor?
It's healing. For some, it is aligning to their soul purpose and discovering what that is and getting alignment to mission, because the galactics do really actually come into one's life when it's time to get into mission. That's what they're there for, is to give you a boost, to give you that higher intellect, is to expand your consciousness and to get you tools that you never thought you were capable of finding or achieving, to get you to the next step. Particular systems assist more with those things than others, but it's really about you finding your own sovereignty, sovereign freedom, and getting to a place that you can ultimately design your own codex, like design your own programs, design your own realms. You are in complete co-creation with the divine. We here together hope to be inspiration for everyone who's watching today, to show a new way that that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be sharing your words, your thoughts, your wisdom with others, and you're supposed to be inspiring and lighting a new path.
Right. And in terms of the goal of consciousness, ignited from within the core, this is what they came to harvest. But in terms of what we're implementing with the mystery school, I want to share things in terms of the nectar of Athanasia, and you yourself have received this.
Yes, I'd also like to congratulate you on launching your product page on your website. She's got some really amazing stuff. I got on there the other night, and there's actually a shirt on there I want to order.
The Serpent of Wisdom.
Serpent of Wisdom shirt. I want to get that one. I had a chance to try this the last month. This is the nectar of Athanasia. Well, I have to tell you, when I first got it, I was a little nervous. I always take things very slow when I try new things, but I started with 4 pumps, and then I got up to 20 pumps just underneath my tongue. You just hold it underneath your tongue. You let it integrate and activate. I started to have spiritual experiences, very activated. I was getting a lot of downloads, and I just had much greater visibility of my consciousness. Like, it was a lot more spectrum that I was able to integrate. So it's really powerful. Really recommend you getting it.
Once you really start experiencing the ignition of these codes and the memories and the integration, realizing that there's a much bigger dynamic, that's when the veils start getting ripped the fuck back. And if you're not healing, and if you're not taking the rights, and if you're not taking action towards making not only your life better, but the life of those around you fucking better, then you're part of the fucking problem. At this point, this is when the shaman class would expel people from the fucking tribe, put them out in the fucking wilderness so they could take the fucking rights. It wouldn't be this toxic soup and mess that we are in as a people. You have to go unto yourself. You literally have to sacrifice yourself unto yourself, like Odin did, seeking wisdom above all things in order for the truth to reveal itself and go through this apophatic process. But once you reach a certain point of ignition and healing and integration, that's where you can come to a level of rhetoric and really start fucking kicking ass in life. I got access to a map that reveals, in terms of where I live right now, it's where all of the real ley lines are fucking converging. I
was going to show you that the center point of the ley line goes straight through where you are.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's crazy.
Wow. Arkansas is Atlantis, crystal cavern network system there.
Hot Springs, Arkansas, pulling of certain fucking threads because shit wasn't fucking working and things needed to be readjusted, so to speak, and then templating being offered to individuals that are fucking ready to take it to the next level. Obviously, you cross that fucking threshold because of what you're doing. And it was a play out of the betrayals that took place in ancient times. It's still plan A. Those of us that have incarnated to do this mission, all of us are still on plan A. But how that unfolds and what that looks like and how it's going to manifest, fusing the fucking Gridworks fucking networks. Now, again, mechanics, not everything is going to work for everybody the same fucking way. You have to know thyself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and things in terms of the temporal existence based upon the universal laws of metaphysics, the eternal axioms, how things actually work, laying the proper foundation in terms of integration and this quest that we're all taking here in order to actually fucking ascend out of the chains of slavery into true freedom, peace, and harmony That's the fifth veil. After the collective unconscious Gridworks are traversed and healed through, the fifth veil is freedom, pressed up against all of this reversal codex in terms of the Metatronics. Okay. And I have faced them. I have literally faced the fucking Watchers myself. And all their fucking meat sacks on lower fucking levels. All of those motherfuckers are weak as fuck compared to our kind and what we fucking know. Now, it may not seem like that in terms of our lives, but if you try to fuck with our kind, you're going to be in for nothing but a belly full of cosmic fucking steel.
And I think that's what people are trying to actually get from you. They're trying to get the healing from you. They're trying to get the initiation, but they're also trying to get the, how do I get to where you are?
Right.
I feel like that's one of the big things that I see from people is they want what you have. How do I attain it? Teach me how you got this.
And that's what I work to show other people. You want to come to the level that I have come to personally, you're going to have to take at least a double fucking portion of what I've had to fucking go through. If at all. I paid the fucking goddamn price. This path, Amanda, has literally cost me fucking everything. Orlog, that alignment in terms of true purpose. We come up against a lot of fucking bullshit. Our birthright in terms of being human is biospiritual regenesis. It's the ignition of that gold of consciousness. What every great magus and alchemist has been working to attain, the fucking aeons. I hail shamanic lineage in terms of my codex. This is in my blood and bones, whether I want it or not.
I gave everything up to do this. I knew what I was working towards was worth it. I didn't know what the bigger picture was going to look like completely, but I just knew that I was all in no matter what. When you're putting together the content creation, because there's a part of me that does actually want to perform. Like I want to create art, like I want to dance and do all kinds of light language stuff. I want the artistic aspect of it, which is taking a backseat to the intellectual and the spiritual and the teaching and the grid work. But
it's cool when you can integrate both, the joining of the spheres, put that artistic flair into things. That torch is a torch of accountability. It's always leveling the fuck up. Always, always leveling up.
The ability to actually create magic. I feel like that's what I need. I need to find other creative, artistic people. So that's what I love doing.
Right. We always just sit at table with our portions in terms of the ancient wisdom councils. I was fucking there. I have memory in terms of this. And shit got fucked up. And with the rise of the parasitic consciousness that was infused in terms of what the Nordic tradition teaches about Gulveg, which means the lust for gold, this is what they came to fucking harvest. Whether it was the ore, the earth, or our essence, in terms of our ability to access gridworks of consciousness that are well beyond what they've implemented in context of those inversions and reversals and the dark Luciferian magic, dark sorcery. It all goes back to that. In this fucking life, facing these fuckers that have tried to take me out, just supposed to pretend like this is all some type of arbitrary bullshit. Bridging and the unity of certain bloodlines and blood codes, bringing it back to that original timeline trajectory, knowing the fucking difference of all this fucking bullshit. It hasn't fucking happened. It hasn't happened, and it hasn't happened since what happened did.
At least with the Ashera aspect of it, the wounded womb, I carry the strongest ninth dimensional motherhood wounds and hooks in my field. And so I see them collectively. It's always been a part of my mission to fight for the divine feminine. And that's where a lot of the Hydra energy comes from. Hydra, serpent mythology.
This is what I was saying in terms of the serpents of wisdom. The symbolism of the serpent having been twisted and inverted. They took the symbolism of the original progenitors, appropriated it, and then inverted and fucking twisted it through religion, the implication and intention of its symbolism in terms of ritual, in terms of personal practice. When I made the design, it was specific in context to what I'm getting at. The serpents of wisdom that existed going back, the heads of these ancient mystery traditions that witnessed the rise and fall of fucking empires throughout the fucking aeons. Our progenitors witnessing and seeing this go the fuck down, and where I'm at in terms of what I've been working to build.
It's all been done on the back of Naga and serpent cults. That's why I say it's always been a Hydra versus Draco warfare. It's the serpent that's fighting the Dark Brotherhood. It's always the serpent that's taking the fault for all of the dark things. If you look at the recent thing with the parasitic invasion, what did they label that thing? Yep. They called it a Hydra.
Right.
That's the same shit that's just replaying.
Right, but I wouldn't even call it a fucking Hydra. It's fucking Cthulhu, motherfuckers. Implemented the fucking ether.
Where does Cthulhu live? Where is Mu? At the bottom of the Pacific.
And things in terms of serpent symbolism having been inverted in terms of the tradition of my ancestors. Take it back to Jormungandr. Who does Thunar go up against during the fucking Ragnarok? This all goes back to the cults of Apophis that sprang forth the 19th dynasty, the cult of Aton, and the rise of the Sethian consciousness. That's what the fuck happened in terms of symbolism that was appropriated, twisted, and fucking inverted.
I'm out here slaying Dracos. I'm removing Draco seals out of people.
That's important. In context to psychic surgery.
Yeah.
I teach the healing arts. I don't do healing on people. I'm not going into their bodies. No, that's your shit. I know one guy that I hit up in terms of that's ultra fucking legit.
I do it interactively with people.
Have you ever seen anyone flip out? These things that are on them fucking manifest?
With the Draco seal removals only. The Draco seal removals do trigger people. People aren't really actually ready to let go of these things. They're so attached to them. They're really fresh within the collective pain body. And there are also still a lot of dark entities slaving and serving it through sexual energy, everything. So it's really hard to remove some of those. Oh. I give a consent form for the Draco seal removal.
The serpent represents wisdom. The law of first mentions reveals this. And this is the parasitic fucking consciousness that I have to fucking face, man. These fucking reptilians and draconians and the Zeta Greys and the insectoids and all this shit having to take on. If we are cosmic fucking royals, then we need to fucking act like it and know the real game. In terms of what the fuck is going on, because this is for fucking real. Hold the original template. I know who I am in terms of my position.
Yeah.
Man, I want to thank you for coming on. It was brilliance.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was good being here, and I hope that we could do it again sometime.
Plug your info for people to get a hold of you and check out your platform.
Find me at IndigoAngel222.com. This is where I have all of my services listed. I do Starseed origin readings, I do J seal removals, I do Draco seal removals, and I also do advanced avatar master practices where I teach advanced Ascension sciences and basically do interactive work to expand consciousness. And I also host monthly grid sessions. So if you're looking to actually do the work with a group, I offer that on my Patreon. So patreon.com/IndigoAngel. And I would love to have you. So if you'd like to join, then just come on over to my Patreon and we'll get you started.
Excellent. And if anybody wants to check out things on my end, again, check out our website at blackearthproductions.com. Send me an email at blackearthproductions@hotmail.com. We got services, we got the products page again, which just launched. And you heard it from Amanda. Again, the elixir priming the premium material in terms of integration. The nectar of Athanasian, it's the process that we are taking to reinstate the birthright of mankind into the reality field. With that, I want to thank everybody for coming on and checking out this segment. To wrap things up, a quote by William Blake: "He who binds himself a joy does the winged life destroy. But he who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise." This is Sethikus Boza, Black Earth Productions, Blue Flame Healing Arts, Occult Science. Be empowered, be encouraged.